everybody, before we start the video, I just want you guys to know it is not my intention to make dealerships or their technicians look bad. There are some great ones out there. In this video, I'm just sticking to the facts. I want to show you guys the importance of proper training wherever you work. Please enjoy the video. Hi everybody and welcome to a new episode of Diagnose Dan. Today we're working on this 2009 Volkswagen Touran with a 1.4 TSI engine. The customer complaint is the check engine light is on, and when the lady drives in slow traffic, the car smells of fuel. Now the lady already brought this car to an official Volkswagen dealership to get it diagnosed. I got a full diagnostic report. They scanned the car for codes and it has a P0172 stored, which is a rich code. Now the technician who worked on this car wrote a full report. And he basically writes, I changed some parts, but if it doesn't fix the car, the next thing I'm advising is to change the turbocharger, because it's supposedly bad. He also gives the lady an estimate of 1,600 euros. Now the thing that got the lady doubting is this sentence over here. It is an intermittent fault, it is hard to find, and it's gonna be a case of trial and error. So the lady basically wants a second opinion. The car ended up in my shop, so let's diagnose this together. I scanned the car for codes and there is a rich code stored in the PCM, just like the dealership told us. The next thing we need to find out is whether this problem is intermittent or the engine is running rich all the time. We can do this by taking a look at the fuel trims. Quick tip, before we can take a look at the fuel trims, we need to warm up the engine first. Now if an engine is running for a longer period of time inside a workshop, make sure you hook up a suction hose. If you don't have one available, just move the car outside of your shop. Now one of the great features of a Bluetooth scan tool like the Verus Edge is that you can take it out of the workshop and take a look at the live data in a more quiet environment. Now let's take a look at those fuel trims. Now as you could see, both the short-term and the long-term fuel trims were very negative. About as negative as they can be. That's the PCM trying to inject less and less fuel to get rid of that rich condition. According to our fault code and our scan data, this engine is running rich. But is it? We can check that by measuring what's coming out of that tailpipe by hooking it up to a gas analyzer. We just confirmed the PCM was right. This engine is running rich, very rich. And this problem is not intermittent. This engine is running rich all of the time. Just take a look at this picture. It was taken moments before some of the numbers went off the charts and beyond the measuring capabilities of my gas analyzer. The .79 is the lambda number. Lambda 1 is the perfect mixture between oxygen and fuel. Everything above 1 is a lean condition, and everything underneath 1 is a rich condition. A very rich condition. And the rest of the numbers are just screaming, too much fuel. Just like a detective, a diagnostician needs clues. Clues to lead you into the right direction. We obviously just confirmed one clue. This engine is running rich. And we have got another clue. Remember that customer complaint? That lady told us that when she was driving in slow traffic, she smelled fuel. Now I can smell it too, especially here in the engine bay. And I noticed that when we take off the oil cap, we can not only smell the fuel, but the fuel vapors start to sting your eyes. Now, since the smell of fuel appears to come from inside the engine, let's check the oil level. Now the oil level is way over here, while it's supposed to be over here. So far, we have learned we've got a rich condition, the inside of the engine smells like fuel, and our oil level is way too high. Any thoughts? Well, let's do a test first. I've got the crankcase breather blocked up by a rubber glove. No crankcase vapors are being sucked into the intake right now. Let's start up this engine and see what our fuel trims are doing. Now, as you could see, both the short-term and the long-term fuel trim became more positive. In the end, the short-term was positive 25% and the long-term was negative 28%. Now, we should always add the long-term and the short-term together. Minus 28 plus 25 is an almost perfect score of minus 3. I'm suspecting there is fuel inside the oil. Now, as the oil warms up, fuel vapors get sucked into the intake and drive the engine rich. In the next step, we're gonna drain the oil. This engine is supposed to hold 3.6 liters of oil. I catched over 4.6 and it is still draining. That means there's over 25% of fuel inside the oil. We diagnosed a part of our problem. We've got fuel inside the oil. The fuel vapors get sucked into the intake and drive the engine rich. But how did that fuel end up in the oil pan? Could it be a stuck open injector? Well, I don't think so. If we had a stuck open injector, the symptoms wouldn't improve when we blocked the breather. When we take a closer look at this engine, there's one more possibility. There's one more part of the fuel system that if it fails, it might leak fuel into the oil system. It is bolted directly onto the valve cover and it's called a high pressure fuel pump. Now let's get that high pressure fuel pump out of there and do a visual inspection. I've got the high pressure fuel pump out of there and there were some traces of fuel on this side of the pump. So the fuel was getting into the oil, passing this piston. Now I'm going to install a new pump, a new roller, fill it up with fresh oil and see if we fix the problem. I've replaced that bad pump, replaced the oil filter, and filled it up with fresh oil. I'm gonna take it for a test drive and get it warmed up. And if I come back, let's see if we have got a fix. I just got back from a test drive, got the engine warmed up, hooked up my scan tool, so let's take a look at those fuel trims. Let's take a look what's coming out of the tailpipe. Rich condition because of a leaking fuel pump. I guess you don't see that every day, do you? Now I'm gonna write a diagnostic report of my own, and it's gonna say fixed permanently. I wonder what would have happened if the dealership changed out that turbo. I guess that lady would have been back after a couple of weeks for a new one and for a new engine. Because after a while, there would have been more fuel than oil in the system. Now, if you like this video and if you want to learn more, please subscribe to my channel. When you hit the little bell, you will get a notification each time I post a new video. Diagnose Dan, fixed it again. See you next time, guys. I've got the crankcase breather. I've got the crankcase. I've got the crankcase breather. I've got the crankcase breather blocked up with a